Well, I'll talk about that thing over there first. I had talked about making a new UPS box. I need one quite badly. My old one is actually an old baking powder shipping crate, and the bottom is made out of some kind of soft material. Now it's been sitting on the ground, so the bottom is pretty much gone, and there would end up being well, spiders. There were spiders in there, but mice would get in there, and the one day there was a snake in there, and I figured, okay, well, sometime the UPS man is going to complain about serpents in the box. So I figured I had to make a new box. Well, part of the trick was to make a box that wouldn't be tempting for somebody to run off with, because it does sit out on the public right-of-way, sort of. You know, it's a dead-end road, but it's during hunting season there gets to be traffic turning around there all the time. And too nice a box can be a problem. But what I'm going to do, you know, this one ended up being a little nicer than it should have been. I got started on it yesterday, and I just kept going, and I tend to overbuild stuff. You know, it's always, well, I'll do this, it'll be a little better, and, you know, pretty soon I got something that's a little too good to sit out on the right-of-way. But it's made out of scraps of popple. I had cut some popple that was 1/2 inch thick. And that's where, like, this is a kind of a knotty piece, so this is a leftover scrap. But I made a bunch of other stuff out of this, and this is a test run with some of that paint, and, you know, it's just kind of handy. It's not heavy wood, but it's much like working with like a pine or something. You know, it's easy to work with. And like for the top of that, I actually have it bowed in order to shed rain, and then it overlaps where it closes down so rain and snow won't blow in. The bottom is elevated inside of there. You know, it's all trying to keep it away from the ground, but what I'm going to do is mount that one, say, a couple feet off the ground, and what I will do is carve my name on the side there that's facing, and what I'll do is, you know, I'm going to paint it with this ochre paint, but then I'll go ahead and, you know, carve my name into it so it's recessed, and then I'll paint it with this yellow ochre, and hopefully that'll discourage somebody from taking it if it's, you know, permanently labeled. But I'll fasten it to the mount, and we'll see if that holds up. Well, I'm not worried about the box holding up, I'm just worried about it staying in position. But like I say, that's one of them projects I got started on. I never bothered doing video on it. I just, you know, got caught up in it and started going at it. So this is for the table, and I thought I'd go into that a little bit more. But like I was saying about that top being bowed, the idea there, you know, the grain on this popple is running this way. You soak the wood, and that's actually quite flexible, and that particular piece had a natural tendency to want to bow that way because of the way it was cut out of the tree, you know, the angle of the grain. So that worked out fine. It went on there well. But I got to let it dry now, because like I say, I soaked it. Once it's dry, then I will paint it, and when that's dry, then I'll carve my name into it, which you'll probably never see it again. Once I've got my name on it, I guess that would be not smart to show that. But I'm going to try to be a little better about showing you the work on this table. Now, like I say, these legs, I cut them out of, this is 3x3 oak. If you remember, I was cutting a 3-inch by 12-inch piece of oak the one day, and that was for these legs, because then I recut it down to 3x3. And I cut the dados, or the mortises in there using my, I keep mixing these up, but it's a Delta a rather large drill press that I have the mortising bits for. So I mortise these out, and now these are the stringers that will run on the sides of the table. I cut these on my table saw with that dado blade, that stackable dado blade. I just set the fence at 1 inch, cut these. Now I have to go back and fit each one, because like here, this shoulder goes above. That's why, you know, I purposely put this mortise down below so that I wouldn't be up and weaken the thing. This way I've got a good solid piece here, and the depth is 1 inch, so it doesn't go all the way through. And then this ends up being flush with the top. Now when this goes in, then this will be pinned, and I will also be running a pin this way into this part here, you know, all the way through from both sides. That'll give it the strength that I need it to have. But, you know, when you're looking at a 1/2 inch, that's pretty heavy. But each one of these now I have to fit by hand, and that's what I'm doing now. Because though they are made on that machine, you know, each one is kind of individual. And when you cut with that dado blade, when I cut these tenons, the main thing when you start doing something like that is to make sure all of your boards are exactly the same thickness, because that's going to screw up the width of your tenon if you have a variation in those. So these I ran all through the planer, you know, to get them perfect. Now, like on that thing, there's nothing planed on that. That's just rough the way it come off from the chainsaw mill. Part of the reason is that that particular paint really likes to go on a rough cut wood. It soaks in better. And my idea is I'm trying to protect that box from the elements, because it sits outside all the time. But like I say, after I cut these now with that dado blade, I have to go back and smooth them, you know, to bring out any irregularities. Not a big deal, but that's where, like I say, each one has to be fit perfectly, and that's what I'm doing now. But when you do something like that, the thing is, label them, you know, because each corner is its own individual fit, and there's no way you can swap them around. And the wood has got to be dry, well-seasoned oak, which is what this is. Like I say, oak's not my favorite. Ash is a much easier wood to work with. You know, like I say, this stuff's heavy, but it'll work well. Now, one thing I should mention, you'll see these black marks on here. Now that actually, all it is the table saw has an aluminum bed to it. And if you run wood against aluminum, that aluminum will leave a mark on it. Well, it's not a big deal, that comes right off. You know, as soon as I'm done with it, I could sand that and get that all off. It doesn't, it's just on the surface. It works like a lead pencil almost. But you'll see that a lot of times, aluminum running against wood, like this is that, all from the aluminum. The one thing cutting dados like this, or these tenons, cutting them this method, that stackable dado blade leaves a lot of little grooves, because the blades are all, there's a little variation in there. This is not a bad thing. I take most of them out when I'm bringing this down, but actually if you're gluing a joint, that's an excellent thing to have, because that gives a place for the glue to really grab. You know, if you've got a perfectly smooth surface, the glue won't grab as well as it will if you've got this kind of rough surface. But I purposely, you know, I wanted a really tight fit, so I'm getting these down perfect. But it's easy enough to go along it, and it gives you a mark to shoot for. You know, if you get down to the bottom of the grooves, then I know I'm at that exact 1/2 inch. But I got to do all corners, you know, make 8 of these fit perfectly. And then there'll be at least 1, maybe 2 cross pieces. You know, these things are flexible. I make it up as I go along. But this is a pretty standard method of doing it. It's much quicker and more accurate than, you know, if you take a handsaw and cut down and then chisel, and, you know, just machining it out that way works very well. Makes a consistent thing. Though, like I say, even then you have to go back and hand fit each one. But the next thing I'll be doing when it's dry, that box will get this. Now, the table won't. It won't be colored. It'll just be the pine tar on there. Look, I think I showed a sample of that before. Around here someplace, but I like the way that works. But that's not a problem. That's going to be inside all the time, or most of the time. But that thing has got to sit outside, so I have to protect that as well as I can. But I think it'll make the UPS man happy. But like I say, I will have to. I'm going to run cross beams between a couple of fence posts, bolt that thing right to them. Hopefully it'll stay put, and hopefully have my name on there will discourage somebody from running off with it. Though, you know, you could end up getting a few bullets in it, or it's hard to say. You know, you don't have, at least with mail, with U.S. mail, you'd have a certain amount of legal protection, but, you know, because then it gets to be a federal offense. But UPS and FedEx, anything can happen. There'll be no repercussions. So I just got to discourage people. You know, my thought at first was to build just a very simple box. But like I say, I tend to overbuild. I tend to get carried away. You know, but I was thinking, okay, I really want to dome the top to shed the rain. I had to make the overlaps to keep snow from blowing in and keep the serpents out. So it ended up that way. If it stays there, I'll be happy. If I can get a year or two out of it, I'll be happy. But I'll try to keep you informed on this better than what I did on that as I go along. But it's going to be a while. I got to, like I say, fit every one of these. But it's going to make a nice table. But I'll try to be a little more diligent in showing this stuff.